Thank you so much. So my name's Kevin Withane. I'm the founder of Diversity X, which is a community for underestimated founders. I use that term rather than underrepresented because I'm white. It reflects that there are plenty of female founders, people of color founders, disabled, LGBTQ plus, neurodiverse, and older is the categories I look at. So I've built a community. The intention is the world's biggest active community of underestimated founders. Alongside that, I'm working on building a VC firm. I say firm, not fund, because the problems I'm trying to address are systemic and so will take generations. So one fund won't cut it. We're working on founder education program and the support system as well. So I'm looking forward to answering your questions, throw anything at me that you want to ask, and yeah, and also look and the pitch feedback I'm quite excited about. Also, just I do have a day job at FTSE 250 as a senior lawyer, run the global ethics compliance program, and drive through sustainability. So you can ask questions if they're around that too.
Cool. So as we were just talking about behind the scenes before everybody joined, the purpose of this program is to get a great beta traction in order to win over investors, essentially. And this week, our founders have been focused on customer acquisition. So we're going to get started with your investor hat on. What does customer acquisition mean to you for early stage founders, and what do you want to see?
I guess it's to some extent it depends on the vertical, but what I want to see is some form of traction and a clear understanding of the financials of that traction. So we talk about customer acquisition costs and long-term or lifetime value as a couple of metrics. I want to see, they might not be great and they should be changing. And initially they're going to be very high because you are at beta stage or testing stage, so your costs are always going to be high. It's simple maths of prototyping. It's always really expensive. But I want to understand where you think you can get to with those costs and how you're going to go about doing that. Is it through it's just a volume based metric, or is there other reasons why, or is it your marketing channels, you're only marketing through certain marketing channels, or you're using Google ads, for instance, and the cost should come down relative to how and when you're advertising. So it's from my side, it's a clear understanding, or the founder clearly showing that they understand how they're going to get to a certain metric, but also being able to show how they are going to market and acquiring customers. What's the theory? Like, is it going to be a human resource that ends up pushing through sales, or is there other ways that you're going to do it?
Cool. And in terms of, obviously it's difficult to benchmark because you've got B2C founders here and B2B and across different industries. But from a customer acquisition perspective, if you were looking at a deck and someone had 100 customers, like, is that enough? When does it actually start looking like, okay, they've got this critical mass of people that are interested and they can scale it from there?
If your product's 10 grand and you've got 100 customers, that's great. If it's 50p, it's probably, yeah, you need volume. So it depends on the proposition and what your pricing is, what your strategy is. Are you a freemium? For instance, SaaS models, like, are you straight out there? It's a one-off enterprise sales. Are you B2B, B2C? The metrics will vary to the type of business, but what I want to see is an understanding of, okay, we've only got 100, or we have 100 customers. This equates to X potential revenue, X potential lifetime value, and we see the cost of it coming down as we grow. And we see lifetime value being around this mark. That will change because your product will develop, and that will change the mindset of also your customers and where they go to. But in terms of specific numbers, it's being able to justify why you think ultimately that's a reasonable sample size and good traction. And it's actually your story, because if you tell me, well, we've got 1,000 customers, but it's really low, that they would be really low spend, and the cost of acquiring them is this, it doesn't mean that doesn't necessarily reflect a good metric to me. And particularly if the costs aren't going to come down in the acquisition of those customers, then you're going to need to spend a lot of money, which means a lot of investor money getting pumped into acquiring those customers. And if the long-term value of those, or lifetime value of those customers, isn't significant, then reflecting that out in your financials, I'm going to be looking at going, well, is this, no matter how much money we pump in, we're only going to be making X return? It doesn't make sense to me.
Okay. Have you seen? Sorry.
Do you mind if I jump in with a quick question?
Yeah, of course.
So to what extent should you focus on customer acquisition and your unit economics before you've run user tests around product market fit and stickiness? Like, is phase one prioritizing making sure there's good engagement and then looking into the unit economics, or do you think from day one you should be focused on that?
I would say getting product market fit is critical. If you look at the 40-something% of startups fail because there's no product market fit. It's a reiterative process. It's constant. It starts from day one, but it continues to day 1,000 or whatever you want to call it, because you need to be continually reiterating to ensure that your product is meeting the needs of your customers. Ultimately, they're the ones who are going to spend the money. So I would focus on that rather than the unit cost of the acquiring the customer. But that has to be bearing in mind, because that cost has to go in somewhere. So that goes into your pricing. How are you going to reflect that cost in your pricing? So there has to be some thought around that, of where you're trying to get to. Like if it's a manufacturing, its products, it's all about piece price, quality of the material. Can you swap out a certain material to make it the cost cheaper, but is that going to affect the quality, and how does that reflect in the marketplace? So I think it's focus on getting the product right and product market fit, but in the background you do need to be thinking about the unit cost.
I just saw a question come in on the chat, which is actually a good question, which is about how to I guess like ascertain what the lifetime value would be when you're at pre-revenue stage. Is there any way that you can test? No, so you just
not really. Like I see a load of decks which have this in, and it's forecast, right? In some senses, if you put a number in and you feel like you can tell a story and justify that, that's good, because you're not selling a number. You're selling yourself and your ability as a leader to articulate a strong understanding of your business model, and how that business model is made up. But the reality is, with all of this, like at that early stage, there's no way of telling. I see decks, people 6 months in, and they seem to be able to tell me that number, and it's like, well, how are you reflecting that? I just don't understand how 6 months of business can tell you anything. 18 months, then you've got a little bit more, I think, real data to say, look, we're revenue generating for 18 months, and this is the traction we've had. This is how our costs have come down. This is general repeat business, sticky, and this is where we can see the stickiness and the sort of, then you can extrapolate, well, we think, these customers are really actually going to be, they're signing up on 2-year contracts, but we think we can get them to a 3-year contract, and it's X value. I think that's when, at what point you can tell. I think early doors, it's just pie in the sky.
Yeah, that makes sense. Have you seen any decks where people have done a really good job of communicating, like at very early stages, like pre-seed stage, done a really good job of making you feel like they've got the traction that you need to invest?
Yeah. So I invested in a company called Circle of Style, and they have just really, really good traction. Like they revamped. So they had they got early traction. And when I asked, what's your cost of acquisition? Your customer cost of acquisition, it was ridiculously low, like pennies low. And it's because they had managed to get a couple of what they call influencers to advertise it. And then so they brought on like just one, I don't know, Instagram post brought on like 800 customers to their site. So it was incredible traction. But the reality is that can't happen all the time, and it would have to end up being paid at some point. But they've been able to show true growth month over month, where the customers are returning. And so they feel like with those numbers, they're relatively accurate now after about 4 or 5 months. They've seen like their customers are coming back about 70% of the time, which I think is phenomenal at that early stage. But their business model is, sustainable, like secondhand clothing essentially. And so the question is, it will be like styling and all of those things. There's other variables that will come in that will affect that. But I think they also realized, and they explained to me, this isn't the true cost. We think it's going to be around this mark. And then they could show me the financials of how that would work and their business plan. I think that was good.
Okay. Ludovico, you had your hand raised, but then you put it down again. So let me know if you do want to ask a question.
Can I jump in with another one? So you mentioned social media. What are the other ways that people have accumulated a sizable or meaningful number of users before they have money to spend on user acquisition?
Waitlist. I saw Lucy's in here. She's got a great waitlist for Loanhood.
Hello.
Cheers. Yeah, she's got a great waitlist. In fact, it's so big that when she opens up her platform, can I share this, Lucy?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so she's gonna but she's only gonna open it up to like a very small number. So it will be revenue generating for them, but it's a small number to really test the product and get in the market fit. So that's the customer acquisition coming in, but also product market fit working together. And I think that's a great example of it. So waitlists are a great way to do it. If you can build traction, people are excited before really seeing your product and using it, that's not a bad sign. But it's also then and doing exactly what Lucy's doing is going, look, we've got a wait list of 1,000, 10,000. I've got a 16-year-old's got 10,000 musicians ready to go on his platform. And he said, yeah, I need to go straight away. And I was like, well, you can't, you won't be able to manage that. Like, literally, you're not resourced for that. And you have to raise a lot of money to just open your doors. So just essentially do what Lucy's doing, do a beta test, open it up. And that's what you need to do. And I guess as part of this program is like understanding what the beta test truly is and actually beta testing your products. So that's having good numbers, but also bearing in mind your sort of price points. But at that point, they don't even know that. So it's all about, have you got people interested in what you're doing? And have you almost in some senses started to build a community around that?
Awesome. There's another question that's just come in on the chat. High engagement, but no revenue versus low engagement, but some revenue. What is more interesting to you?
That's a great question. It's a really hard one to answer. I think for me personally, it depends on the type of business. Like if I'm excited about that space, that business, then high engagement, no revenue could still be interesting. That said, in the real world, I'm also very interested in people being able to sell their product or their service. And so lower engagement, but you've got revenue and you can show me how you can grow that revenue. That's also important. So I guess from an investor perspective, it really depends on the investor and the idea. Like, I think there's been plenty of businesses, and I can't name any off the top of my head now, that have had high engagement, but the moment you put a price to it, it completely goes, like there isn't the revenue. And that's what some companies, like getting the pricing right early, either like going too low and then going, well, actually we're like at £5 a month and we're going to go to £15 a month. That's going to put a lot of people off. Understanding your pricing model early on is very important, because you're going to lose customers otherwise.
Okay, we have a few more questions from the audience. Actually, we have a lot of questions from the audience. We will give priority to people who want to come on and ask their questions live. So if you have a burning question, raise your hand. Okay, we have one from Rishi. I'm in a slightly different situation in that I've had a website with 11,000 users consuming free content over the last couple of years, but need to convert them into paying customers like B2C or B2B for courses and quizzes that I'm now building. What would you be looking for in this case? Rishi, is there anything you want to add on additional context there? You can take yourself off mute and ask.
Yeah, hey Margaret. So yeah, it's thinking about how to actually turn this into a business, because I guess it's been a community for the last couple of years, and I've built that kind of engagement to help people prepare for kind of exams and provided quizzes, and it's tend to be short-term engagement. So it's, you know, they tended to just come on, take some practice questions, and then hopefully pass the exam, and then they've not really come back to the site. But they're there as subscribers. Most of them are subscribers, so I've got them on a mailing list, and I've got that potential to try and convert them into customers. So I guess, what would you be looking for in terms of seeing how successful we could do that, and any ideas, obviously, for strategies on how to do it would be useful as well.
Firstly, I think it's a really good number, and particularly if they're like, apart from the subscribers, what's the actual number of users, active users?
Active users per month, it's dropped off because it's a couple of hundred a month.
Couple of hundred. So those active users are probably going to be the ones that pay, as opposed to your sort of mailing list of 11,000.
Yeah.
I guess question is, out of the non-active users, like, are you able to see who comes back out of your mailing list? Like, are you adding new people coming in, checking out the site, but not really doing anything or coming back? Or are you seeing people, drop in once a month, or once every few months, or once every 6 months, who are already on your mailing list?
Yeah, I've got all the data for it. I haven't done the analysis. I've got data on literally everything, every single site visit, every single page they visit, every single interaction, every single performance data as well. So every single question they answer, whether they get it right or wrong, I've got all of that performance data. So I've got ways to do custom segmentation, but I'm not quite sure exactly how to do that, and how best to drive to convert those people. But yeah, what would you be looking for in terms of to turn it into a viable business? What kind of metrics would you be wanting to see that?
Returning users, spend or potential spend.
Yeah.
On that, and then that, and the sort of cost of a customer, and the cost of customer acquisition.
Sure. Okay. All right. Thanks.
Okay, perfect. Chris, we're going to go to you, and then we're going to take Julian's questions from the chat.
Hey, Kevin, how you doing? You all right? Chris from Good Coffee here. Yeah, I wonder if I get your advice. So my company, Good Coffee, wants to create mixers, coffee tonics, basically take coffee into like the social setting, to either enhance coffee cocktails and the like, or non-alcoholic drinking. So my position, basically, I've done like a trial production run of like ready to drinks, and that ultimately is where I want to end up. But financially, I'm no longer in a position to continue down that route. So what I do at the moment is I'm doing a lot of face-to-face events. I'm making the mixers, serving a lot of customers, and I'm seeing a real turn in sort of understanding and interest, and, you know, just basically people really enjoying and feedback for the products. So what I'm sort of asking is, effectively, I'm kind of developing this brand that's going to hopefully own that kind of space with coffee, but I'm unsure really how to present it now. Do you know what I mean, to an investor in that sense, because it sort of floats across a lot of fields at the moment.
Well, the way you explained to me, I think there's two fields, right? Essentially, it's a ready to drink alcoholic beverage, or a ready to drink like a mocktail type of beverage, right? So it's non-alcoholic, but it's sort of a mix, including coffee.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So in some senses you're creating a, I don't know if there's anything else out there. I guess I haven't seen anything, so maybe not. You're creating a new brand and type of beverage, so you need a bit of customer education, because you're introducing a new taste to their palate. So I guess, who are you marketing to? So I think to sell it to an investor, it's like, you've got great feedback. This is what you've done. This is how many units you've been able to sell at pop-up stores or markets or wherever you're selling. And this is the feedback that we've got, and be quite granular and open with the investor about that. And your plan, like you've got a clear idea of, this is a ready to drink beverage. So what really you're looking at is, you need to find investors also who have connections. I'd strongly suggest getting angels who have connections with distributors, wholesalers, and of course the beverage industry, within the alcoholic beverage industry, so the breweries and so forth, to help you market that. But I actually think you be straight up and you say, look, this is what we've done. We have carry sips. Just over 1 second.
No worries.
That's my son. We have a brand currently who do this with, I guess, flavors connecting the world. It's about, and another big problem is also scaling. Like, it's because it takes manufacturing and materials, and someone who knows like the difference between bottling and putting a drink in a can. But from your side, like, your metrics, I think, probably show some good data there and good feedback. So be open and honest, but you should be going to investors, because I think it's one of those businesses that needs money to scale.
Yeah, cool. Okay, thanks, mate. Nice one.
Perfect. Thanks, Chris. Okay, two questions from Julian from NoCast. First one, it's on LTV. He said his benchmark for LTV to CAC is 1.0 in the early days, but wants to aim for 3. Does that number resonate? And second question is for product market fit. Product market fit is usually achieved around like pre-seed or later. But for when you're pre-seed, how do you show that you have the potential to hit product market fit? Or what would investors be looking for? Like, what sort of product market fit metric would people be looking for at the pre-seed round?
Yeah, this goes back to that point which I was talking about with wait lists and so forth. Can you get customers? Can you get people excited about what you're doing, what you're building? If you can, that's an example of product market fit at early stage and pre-seed. If you can show a prototype or even like a straw man or a wireframe of what you're going to do, and people are willing to sign up and join a wait list, then that tells me you've got something potentially there. Obviously, and getting the feedback of what people want as well. If you can having those customer conversations, because if you can get into the door of people with nothing, that's pretty decent.
Thanks very much. So actually, you mentioned Carasips. I was involved in another venture group, and I got to meet Aisha and chat with her actually. So Carasips is a great South London venture, like mine. So go South London and go Aisha. It's a great opportunity, and she's done some great work, being in the field and getting that feedback with the booths and things. It was really interesting seeing what she's doing. So thanks for your feedback on that. Ultimately, to me, there's quite a clear distinction between, there's a book called The Right It that talks about other people's data and your own data. And one of the challenges is benchmarking and trying to come up with a model of what might work and the stories around that. And the way I'm manifesting that is through lots of yellow boxes in the sheets. And these are the assumptions, like, yeah, I'm assuming this and I'm assuming that. And it's very tricky, but the good news is that, the work that we've been doing, we had a lot of prototypes and we got some good feedback. The biggest question and why I'm really excited about this program is I wanted to make sure that the beta is focusing on the right kinds of things that allow us to get to that point that we have confidence. And there's a concept actually, sorry, I'm dominating here, but there's a concept that I thought was interesting that I also want to get your thoughts on, which was the Intercom founder talked about product customer fit. And this was the idea that you have a small number of users, and maybe only a few dozen, who have completely changed their behavior to using your product or service instead of another. And that was an interesting signal that I'm hoping to get at the end of a beta. So I might have 100 people using the product, maybe only 20 or 30 that are now no longer using Apple Podcasts or Spotify for listening to podcasts. They're using Notecast for note-taking. And to me, that will be an interesting signal. And I was interested in like whether you've heard that concept of product customer fit as an interim step to product market fit, because product market fit to me is something I want to achieve at the end of seed. But as a consumer product, that might be a year away.
Yeah, that's a great point. Actually, if you can show that you're changing people's behavior, one, you're well on the way to, it's what I would define as you're well on the way to product market fit. But also potentially you are disrupting the market. I'm trying to think of examples that I use. Airtables.
Yeah.
I'm older than quite a number of you, as the grey hair probably tells. So I've grown up on Microsoft. And then someone came up and said, like, there's this Airtable. I was like, what's the point in Airtable? You've got Microsoft. Like, what do you need another sort of spreadsheet thing? And they said, well, look what you can do with it. Can you do this with Microsoft? And I was like, well, to be honest, I'm a lawyer, so I'm never great with Microsoft Excel as it is. But Airtable completely changed my way of thinking, that now anything I get in Microsoft, I copy it straight into Airtable. And that's changed behavior. And that's why, like, that's an example of customer fit, because it's not like it didn't exist, but they've actually amped it up in a way and made it much more friendly, usable to me, and changed my behavior because I wasn't sure about it. Now I'm paying for it. And Microsoft is included in my package anyway. The Excel was there, paid for it, but I'm paying for this other service. So yeah.
It's interesting to say that behavior change.
Hey, Julian. Sorry, we're a little over and have to move on to the pitches shortly. So just going to try to get some more questions answered. But
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, we have Ajit, Anthony, Riza, and Charlotte. Are any of the four of you, can you just raise your hand, interested in pitching as well? Because we want to get your questions answered, but we might try to merge the two. I'm seeing some shaking and some nodding your head. Okay, what we'll do is you can ask your question, but if you want to pitch, you can do that as well. And then we'll try to quickly get through all of you guys and make sure that everyone who wants to pitch has the opportunity to do so. So Ajit, you are first up.
Okay. So what's the best way to engage an investor and keep them excited during the beta phase? We'll be entering that phase during the course of this program. And so if I were to keep you interested about my progress, what would you want to hear?
I want to hear what you're learning as you go through that process, and like the positives, but also the negatives. And I want to know how you intend to address those issues that you're seeing coming up to improve your product, to get it out. And also, are you looking at all avenues for testing and to speed up the runway, essentially? Because from an investor point of view, we want to be revenue generating as quickly as possible. At the end of the day, we recognize that certain businesses are going to take longer than others. But if the founder can show me, like, actually we can do this without really shortcutting, but actually still getting a great product out there, that can generate revenue and still be in some senses testing to improve for product market fit, that's okay with me.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Okay, Anthony, you are up.
Hello, Kevin. Good morning. My name is Anthony. I'm from Ariadne team. So we are the new exchange and we level the playing field for retail investors. But basically my question has like two dimensions. So let me start with, let's say that we do have the road to market. So we want to show market fit with the wait list, such as the loan hood did as well. And also, like, get our prototype, but this prototype is not going to be actually 100% clickable with many code, because we'll have like some algorithmic trading strategies to produce some passive income or other tools, which cannot be put in there. So do you think that with a big relatively waiting list and with a prototype that actually will show maybe like a user journey, this would give us like another dynamic when talking to investors? Because at the moment I'm in the process of kicking the fundraise, so essentially I'm trying to gather interest from investors.
Yes, is the answer. All of that will get an investor interested. I mean, you've got to taking these single elements out, like, an investor looks holistically or should look holistically. So it's not one element of your business, and part of, potentially investors will invest even though you don't have great traction, even though you might not be at beta, or you're going through that beta testing, so don't have genuine data. If they believe the market is great and you're a great founder, because they're investing in you, and they might be able to help you. And actually, when you look for investment, find the right investor. Don't just look at the money. Is because if they can help you get to where you want to get to, that's much more valuable than the cash that they can give you. So, do your due diligence just like they should be doing theirs on you. Does that answer your question?
Yes, of course. I do appreciate. And there's like a small little other part. So because you mentioned some matrix that will have to show up, for example, customer acquisition cost, etc., etc. I'm struggling a little bit to, let's say, compute that, because what we want to do is essentially utilize all the roads with the smallest expenses for us. Let's say we're going to use some influencers, bootstrapping from our own network, because some of the co-founders have thousands of followers on Instagram and TikTok, where is most of our target market, so essentially Gen Z and millennials. So would the simulation of this network could show as well dynamic? We can say that we have this network. So essentially, if we acquire 30% of them, this will add as well to our traction. And how we can tackle the fact that we cannot have solid data in terms of customer acquisition costs or other costs like average account sizes, etc., etc.
Yeah, you've got to be able to forecast that. So whilst it is a guesstimate, so let's just play this out. So you can tell me you got 10,000 followers on Instagram, right? That's your personal following. And then you say, well, Kevin, I think I can convert 30% of those. It's like, oh wow, so that's exciting for me. How? And how much is it going to cost you to do that? And that's
great question.
That's the question that you need to be able to answer. Because the numbers on their own, lovely. But really, if you can't, my question is, how are you going to convert them? Yes, they're your personal followers, but being a personal follower is very different from following a brand.
Yes, exactly. This is where you match your skills as a leader and as a public person, I would say, and then you incentivize them and you try to motivate them to join you essentially to your community and to the values that you represent. And through everything you post and through your content, I guess this is a relationship that is being built through months, let's say. But I got your point, and thank you very much.
Yeah, and one thing a lot of people quickly, I'll just add, that they forget is time. Time costs money. Like if you spend a lot of time to try and get that, and the founders never add their own time in there, but that is a cost. Learn to, even if you're not sharing that cost, learn to start measuring it, because as you grow and scale, that cost becomes important.
Great. Makes sense. Thank you.
We're going to move on to Riza and Charlotte. Reminder, we want to get through these questions and answers really quickly so we can move on to the pitches. Okay, Riza, you're up. Oh, can you take yourself off mute? There we go.
Hi. We have an app which is a marketplace. And my question is that obviously a marketplace is a chicken and egg basket. So who do you stress on? Who's your main focus here? Do you go after businesses because ultimately they're going to be paying you? Or is it the customers, the users, it's going to be free for them, but is it the users that we need to show how many people are going to be sort of using the app?
It's a great question. It's a mixture of both. You need to have sufficient business on there to attract the customers, but you need to have, I think you need more businesses first, personally, but you need to be building up a wait list of customers, potential customers. If it's already open, your marketplace, then you've got data there already.
Actually, the problem is when it's in beta.
But when it's in beta, you're testing, right?
Yes.
Well, no,
So,
I mean, we're pre-release is pre-release.
Yeah. So you've got people who can use that site. So whilst it may not be full, at the beta stage, like using that Lucy example again, having 200 people coming in, using it regularly, and then getting that feedback is important. Or are you before that stage?
Well, we are before that stage, but also the problem is that even if we were at that, we could be at that stage, but then businesses don't trust it, and then businesses are not going to say, oh, okay, because there is a big chicken and egg problem, because the business say, okay, they don't have enough users because they're still in beta, and then consumers will say, okay, there's no businesses on here, and hence what do you do?
That's a great work on then your proposition may not be right, because businesses will be on platforms that they think are going to help them acquire customers, and maybe it's the approach to those businesses that is out of step with what they're looking for. As an example, Wakuda, right? They have a great I don't know if you know them, they really focus on showcasing Black-owned businesses. But they started building that. It had a clear focus, clear proposition. Their target market actually turns out to be quite different to what I thought. Their actual customers turned out to be quite different demographic than I thought. I thought, oh, okay, well, this is going to be a great hub for people of color to go and see the brands that they don't see in Waitrose or in the high street, all of these places. Turns out it's actually white people with a certain income bracket that tend to be their customers and repeat customers. But they built by getting the businesses first. So they had a good business and they had a good proposition. Those businesses wanted to be on that platform because the proposition was good, that they realized that, okay, this platform will help us reach a greater audience, and us being there will also attract potential customers to that platform.
Okay, thank you. We're gonna move on to Charlotte. You're up.
Hi, I'm Charlotte from Calda, the LGBT mental health app. So my question is around calculating your customer acquisition cost. So let's say with us, we've managed to get in loads of users for free from an app called Sweatcoin. So we had like a partnership with them. So we've got like 500 odd users that came from Sweatcoin, and then we've got some kind of like Facebook ad stuff, and we've got some CAC information there. But the Sweatcoin information would make it look like our customer acquisition cost was really, really low. So it's a bit like the person you were talking about with influencers, like you can't always keep that going forever. So what do you say about your customer acquisition cost?
Show both. Explain why there's different from the delta, and then say realistically we think it's going to be this based on how we can acquire. Because if you've got potential other partnerships that you can do that to acquire customers that way, then that is going to keep your cost down anyway. And that's good. That shows me that you've got avenues to get customers at low cost. So it brings your entire CAC down anyway. So I think show that you can do both, because it is good.
Awesome.
Okay. For the first pitch, Edward, you are up. Do you want to take yourself off mute and turn your camera on?
Okay. I never had a pitch. I'm sorry, I never had a pitch. I had a question. I had a question, so I don't know how.
Sure,
to
yeah, no problem. Go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, my question is, how do you define attraction to an early stage startup? How do you define attraction to an early stage startup? That is my question. Yep.
Again, it depends on the vertical you're in. But you need to be able to either show that you've got potential customers waiting to use your product, like they are literally, if they're willing to be on a wait list. And the way to do that, it's not just the sign up of the wait list, but like a great way is keeping newsletters. So you're updating those customers, then you can show me like, well, how many clicks do I, how many of those, that wait list, and how many of those potential customers are clicking open to understand where we are on our journey. Company that I'm an advisor on does this really well. It's Candidate X. So their product hasn't, it's way behind schedule. Don't tell them I said that, but it's way behind schedule. But they've managed to keep their potential users engaged for, I'd say, 9 months through bringing those potential users along the journey with them. And they can show me data of how many people are clicking open, how many of those potential users clicking open, waiting, how many emails then they're getting on the back of that, like where they are in their journey, either offering help to help them get from where they want to. So they're already building the fan base, but also, these are potential like candidates for jobs that when they open up their marketplace with their partner. But honestly, it depends on the business.
Thank you. So with the pitches, we're going to move into pitches because we've got about 15 minutes left. You're going to be pitching your problem and your solution, which is what we did last week, but then also adding your traction or your key data point that's going to make Kevin be really interested and want to find out more. Kevin, we just want a bit of feedback. Did you understand the problem? Do you understand the solution? Is it linked to the problem? And based on what they've told you, would you take a follow-up meeting with them? And if you say yes, you have to actually do the follow-up meeting as well. So please be as honest as you can be. There were a few people that didn't get to pitch last week that we didn't manage to get round to. So if that was you and you want to pitch to Kevin today, can you raise your hand so that we can cross-check it with our list? But we'll get started with the first person that we had here, which is Ajit.
Hi, Kevin. My name is Ajit Barik, and I'm co-founder of Wiser. So planning one's finances to meet one's life goals is both hard and expensive. A vast majority of people don't understand their finances, and employing a financial planner is expensive at £150 per hour on an average. On top of this, a lot of financial management tools in the current market put the burden of planning finances on individuals. As a result, at least 70% of millennials in the UK fall through the financial well-being gap. And the current cost of living crisis is making it worse. So we at Wiser have assembled a team of top-tier bankers and technologists to build a best-in-class AI platform that would understand the financial circumstances of an individual and automatically plan their finances. So this would simplify budgeting, saving, and investing by providing more context and significantly reduce manual effort and decision-making compared to existing tools.
Thank you.
So in terms of the problem, I'm guessing you're saying that the cost of a financial advisor is prohibitive for many people, and yet a significant number of, particularly, I guess your target customer is millennials, don't have a strong enough grasp over their own financial and certainly not their financial well-being, which can affect their financial well-being. Your solution is an AI platform. which provide, I didn't really understand what you provide on there. I can't tell if you're linking up all of their financials into one place and then they can get a clear idea, or you're providing education around different things that people should be doing. So I'm unclear on actually what your solution is to the problem. And I don't know the size of the market you're talking about. Like, is this really a major problem? Is it a UK problem? Is it a global problem? I don't know. So I think there wasn't enough information in there for me to.
Okay. So the problem is a global problem. So it affects at least 70%.
All right, I'm gonna have to cut you off because we need to get through a few more people. Apologies. Because otherwise we'll end up going on this track, I think, for the next 10 minutes. Sorry. Thank you, though. Julian.
Yeah, hi there, Kevin. So I'm Julian Harris, the founder of Nocast. So I've been creating internet software for the last 25 years, including 8 at Google. So the problem that I'm trying to solve is that millions of people, and we're talking hundreds of millions of people around the world, want to make the most use of their time while they're on the go. And they might be cycling or shopping or driving or commuting, but they have limited screen access in those situations. And they're trying to learn through podcasts and other audio, but all the tools today are about media streaming and they need the screen. And so people are left really frustrated. So why now this problem is to be addressed is that they have all these waves of growth that are pushing this demand and the problem to be more and more people. We've got high-speed mobile consumption growth, we've got subscription adoption and growth, and we've got podcast consumption growth. You know, it's everywhere, huge amounts of growth. So, and in terms of like the solution needs, based on our feedback and our field work, it needs to be hands-free, and none of our competitors do this. And so the solution that we've created is Nocast for a hands-free note-taking and learning app that allows you to take notes from podcasts and other audio using just your voice. So you can be driving and you say, hey, Nocast, highlight that, and it'll highlight the last 20 seconds of transcribed content safely as well. So later, to improve the quality of learning, you can play back just those specific highlights. So in terms of progress and traction, so we've had really great feedback from our target audience, which is affluent, well-educated knowledge professionals, from MBA students, senior leaders in management consulting, but also doctors and lawyers. So we field tested a fully functional voice prototype with 25 people all over the world and iterated dozens of times. And we got really excellent feedback. And one quote is, saves hours of time having to go back and trying to find the things that I care about. In terms of commercialization, we've also really got great feedback on willingness to pay. So we set ourselves up for a subscription service initially launching in the UK and the US with beta in July. It was planned to find—
Julian, try to wrap up in like 15 seconds.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So we're looking to, sorry, that derailed me. I'll start again. So we've also got great feedback on willingness to pay and set ourselves up for a subscription service initially launching in the UK and US in July with plan to find a product customer fit for 10 to 20 people. We're seeking £1 million funding. Yeah, that's it.
It's a good pitch. I understand the problem, I understand the solution. The 25, what I don't understand is the size of the opportunity, particularly as you gave your ask, which was great. So you got to that and you did it. Also your background and your team, what was your background really at the beginning that you expressed, which all adds up well. I just can't tell how big the market is for this. My sense is it's massive. Because my head's already thinking a lot about it, and I think about when I used to drive and I used to shout out, Siri, do this while I'm driving. It doesn't seem to work when I'm back in the UK now. I don't know why that is. So yeah, I think the market is good. I'd actually like to know more because I'm fascinated by this technology, but you do need to add in the size of the opportunity.
Okay, good feedback.
I want to jump to Philippa because I know you were waiting last week as well, and then I think everybody else here is new for this week.
Thank you Thank you. So my name is Philippa Kelly, and I'm the founder of Samantha. I have many years experience in the interpreting industry, working as an interpreter in different legal, government, and healthcare settings. And I identified many issues that clients and interpreters have. For instance, limited availability of interpreters. Some interpreters are not available in certain languages, high prices, and very poor access to quality interpreters, and no on-demand availability for interpreters in emergencies. So we built Samantha, keeping in mind what the customers need. Samantha is a mobile application which offers a fast and easy solution for on-demand interpreting. So you can search, book, hire, and video call interpreters who are available 24/7 in any geographical location and in any language. So everything happens in the ad. In the app, you can search by their qualification, experiences, reviews, and you can book in advance. Payment is in the app, and as I said, the connection is through an integrated in-app video call or voice call system. The global market is over 15 billion, and we are targeting a smaller part of it. So our target market would be legal and government, healthcare, businesses, travel and immigration, humanitarian and refugee support, social interaction, and social integration. At the moment, we have 85 interpreters in 14 different languages, and we have 2 companies which registered, and we are talking to some more companies who use interpreters.
Great pitch. Having experienced this problem myself, being a lawyer, and I run a global ethics compliance program, and I know like it is hard to get interpreters sometimes when I'm doing investigations.
Now here I am.
There you are. How big is your you said you've got a target market, like the overall market is 15 billion. What do you think realistically? And are you going to be UK based or global?
So for the moment, because we just started, so we are based in Ireland. So we are only in Ireland and UK. So we find that in UK, we found interpreters for languages which you can't find in Ireland. So we want to be global, of course, because again, thinking that, for instance, if it's 2 o'clock in the night in Ireland or UK and everybody's sleeping, and there is an emergency, you can find an interpreter in another country where it's daytime and somebody is awake. So we want to be global. We are targeting the global market in long time, so in the long run. But right now it's just, so
so from a feedback perspective, I think you clearly articulated the problem and the solution. I can see what the size of the market is, and I can see what your traction is. So actually gave me some good data on that pitch. So yeah, personally, I'd like to know more actually.
Okay, I'm going to contact you.
Okay, we're going to move on. And Kevin, you have a hard stop at 12, right?
I do. So we've got 2 minutes, but if someone can pitch in like a minute, that would be amazing.
Okay, Ahmed, pitch in 1 minute.
Sure. So hi, I'm Ahmed, product manager at Countech, and over the last 3 years, we have successfully built an agency business helping small manufacturing and product-based businesses identify and implement the right finance and operations SaaS apps, moving them away from spreadsheets and reducing manual admin work. This could be something like Xero, MRP Easy, or a CRM like HubSpot. We've had great success. We've 10x the revenue over the past financial year and have become government suppliers. And these apps are great individually, but as a collective set of tools, they create confusion, a lack of clarity, and a lot of manual work. A lot of our existing customers are coming to us and saying, the data across their inventory system and accounting doesn't match up. There's too much data for them to manage across all these different platforms, or they don't have complete visibility of their business performance. So what's happening is they're drowning.
Using Miro question.
They end up dumping all their data from these platforms into Excel or Google Sheets and manually trying to make sense of the numbers. And running your business on spreadsheets is just not a sustainable way to grow. There's a lot of mistakes that can happen. And I'm sure you've all heard about JP Morgan losing 6 billion due to one copy and paste error. So imagine the impact that could have on a small business. So our solution is to introduce a visual integration platform called TBAS.
Yeah, Ahmed. So I think Kevin's got to run in probably like 45 seconds. So I'm going to cut you off.
I'd say this though. I guess we were a minute in before you came to what you're trying to do. So, and I couldn't really grasp what the problem is, but I'm guessing people have different apps, and they even though they have those, they then ended up copying and pasting back into something like Excel, and that could cause problems. But I've got to admit, I couldn't really hear properly what you were trying to say.
Okay, concise, clarity. Those are the keys for next time. Thank you so much, Kevin. Little Zoom round of applause for you. And Philippa and Julian, we will connect you with Kevin afterwards. And thank you so much for your time this morning. We appreciate it.
Pleasure. I hope it was useful, and reach out if you got questions. Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thanks.
Everyone else, stick around. We have got, first we're going to go over some news and then we'll break off for the peer sessions. So first up,